Hey, good morning, Mountain View. How are you? Man, good to see you all with smiling faces. I know that I'm making a habit out of coming out here first. And so just two quick church business type announcements. I said these same things last week, but I know some of you were partied out from the New Year's night, all right? And didn't make it. So announcement number one is we have a specific responsibility as far as with our congregation to introduce who would be our next elder or an elder who would serve on our elder team. And so I wanted to make the announcement, in case you missed it last week, that Larry James has been processed. He has been processed. Wow. Wow. He has, let me do that all over again. He has gone through the self-assessment and through the interviews with our team that's made up of people from our church, and then he's also gone through the elder assessment, and the elders voted to invite him to serve as an elder for the next 4 to 6 years. And so Larry James attends second service. They've been a part of our church for several years. He has been able to meet with a couple of our elders consistently this past year as they just mentored and kind of viewed where he was at spiritually and all of those good things. And so we just believe he's prepared to lead our church as an elder for the next 4 to 6 years. And basically, we're in the waiting period where we invite you, if you have any reason to say, no, Larry shouldn't serve, and we really look for a biblical reason, then you can communicate that with us. Otherwise, by the end of this week, he will become an elder at our church and serve for the next 4 to 6 years. There you go. Second announcement is this, in case you missed it. Over Christmas, actually December 23rd, we had a sprinkler break. And we had quite the flooding in our church, and it ran down these walls here under the stage and ultimately to the basement in our kids' area. And so we have a lot of water damage and a lot of things going on. And if you notice the tape keeps moving because they keep finding wet spots. And it's not like a pond where it's perfectly round and the water just runs there. It kind of creates these fingers all over the place. And so in the next couple of weeks, you're going to begin seeing some restoration, and the restoration is going to be messier before it gets cleaned up. And so I want you to be prepared when you come in next week and you see massive holes in the wall. You don't go, what happened? You know what I know. Sound good? And so we're praying for our insurance company just to be able to provide everything that's necessary for us to take care of everything that we need to take care of. Join us in praying about that, and we'll see what good work God can do. All right? Let's stand together. Let's worship. Let's celebrate.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't give up. the sound of just one name, over all, Jesus reigns. I know. Nations bow, mountains shake at the sound of just one name. Over all, Jesus reigns. I know. King of glory, come on. There is a King of glory. There is a God who saves. One who is strong and mighty. Freedom is in his name. So open the gates of heaven. Lift up a shout of praise. There is a lion roaring. Jesus, the King of glory. The King of glory. The King of glory. I want to get in the right key. You guys know the song, come on, sing with me. Worthy of every song we can ever sing. Worthy of all the praise you can ever bring. Worthy of every breath you can ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you, God.
Go ahead and have a seat and grab your communion. If you're a guest with us this morning, every week here at Mountain View, we stop and we pause. We tap into a practice that's been going on for thousands of years. Remembering, taking time, pause to giving thanks. I want to take the bread and the juice together today, so I'm going to give you just a moment to have a personal time of reflection. And I'm going to read, and we'll take the bread, and then I'll read, and we'll take the juice together. And so just take time this morning, pause, give thanks for Jesus. Jesus, we stop to appreciate and to give thanks, to give honor to the gift of eternity that you have given to us. On Thursday night of Passover week, Jesus changed a long tradition in Jewish culture. And he says this at the table with the 12 as he's there. As they were eating, Jesus took bread. And after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to the disciples. And he said, "Take and eat. This is my body." Let's take. Jesus, thank you for inhabiting that which you created, for coming down and taking on the form of a human and giving your body as a sacrifice that would not have to continue, that you were the end and the final, the complete, finished sacrifice. Thank you for being that on our behalf. And then he took a cup. When he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and he said, "Drink of it, all of you. This is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Let's drink. Jesus, thank you for being the final lamb, shedding the final blood that needed to be shed for the forgiveness of sin once and forever. That we get to be here today, that we get to live life, that we get to look forward with hope to eternity because of your sacrifice, because of your spilled blood. In your name we pray. Amen. There's just a couple of things I want to share with you today. And the first one is that Shonda Pierce is coming to the Northwest here in just a little while. Some of you might know who she is. And she's a comedian, and she actually reached out and said, "Hey, can I come to Mountain View?" And so March 17th, we're going to host her. If you would like to go, tickets will be on sale the next couple of weekends. The benefit of buying tickets here is that you don't pay the fees that you would pay if you purchase them online. So be looking to do that if you would like to enjoy Shonda. The second thing is man, we'd love our young families to connect through something that we call Family Experience. And we try and do those once a month. And so coming up January 20th is our next Family Experience. It's a game night. And so just encourage young families, bring your board games and be at the church and just share an evening together and get to know each other a little bit more. Then would love for you to connect with us today. There are tall red cards in the chair in front of you, and you can fill those out and let us know that you're here, especially if you're here new today. or if you don't want to fill it out in person, you can just scan the QR code in the back and do that electronically on your phone.
So one of the great things about the series we're in, All In, is it's an opportunity for me to share a little bit about the mission of our church. And if you're new to Mountain View, this is a perfect Sunday to learn what we're all about. And that way you can make a decision whether you're all in with Mountain View or not. If you've been around for a while, then guess what? This is a great reminder about what we are all about and who we want to be as a church. And so years ago, we really articulated the mission of Mountain View and why Mountain View Christian Church exists and why we do what we do. And it all comes from a simple question. When you think about God establishing Mountain View Christian Church in East County, Gresham, Oregon, right here on Cleveland Avenue on 6.66 acres, mind you, all right? I still contend we need to buy just a tenth of an acre, all right? Just saying. When you think about all of that, we have to ask the question, what is God doing here? What is God doing with us? What does God want to accomplish with this church? And so ultimately, we landed on, I guess what you would call a mission statement, and it's really this: we want to affect life change. That's what we want to do. And this isn't anything fancy, because really, if you are a church, then the church should probably represent and fulfill the mission that Jesus gave us. And the mission Jesus gave us, we can read in Matthew 28. All right, Mark mentions it also, but Matthew 28 specifically says this in verse 18. It says, "And Jesus came to the disciples, and he said to them, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and do what? Make disciples.'" That's it right there. And then Jesus gives them kind of the recipe of how it works. First, you've got to go, and then what you do is you baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You teach them to observe all that I have commanded you, and behold, I am with you to the very end of the age. And so really, our mission is simple, to make disciples. But Jesus really gave a lot of latitude and a lot of ability, a lot of room for us to figure out how is it that we are going to do that. I mean, for example, Jesus himself had a mission. He stood up in Luke chapter 4 in the synagogue, and he began to teach. He read from the scroll, right? And he established really what his mission is. You can read this in Luke chapter 4, verse 18. It says this: "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me," and here it is. This is what he's going to do. He's going to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives. He has sent me to recover the sight of the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And so even Jesus himself said, listen, this is what I'm going to be about. This is what I'm going to accomplish. This is who I'm going to be while I serve in my ministry on earth, ultimately knowing that Jesus was going to die a death on the cross and be raised again 3 days later. He fulfilled his mission. And the longer you're here at Mountain View, the longer you'll recognize what this mission really means. And part of it is this: you have to understand, and I have to understand, I can't change you, right? And my analogy is always, how many of you ladies have ever tried to change something in your husbands? And how has that worked? Are you still working at it? And gentlemen, how many of you have tried to instill some sort of change in your wives? And how you're over it. See, you've been there, done that. You tried, right? And as much as we want to change our kids, we want to change our families, we want to change people all the time. We want to change things. And how well does that work? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the only person you can change is who? Yourself, right? However, as a 13-year-old boy, I met somebody who absolutely changed my entire life. And his name is Jesus. And I got the disease of Jesus, and it has forever changed me. To the point to where I just desire to become more and more and more like him. The more and more I become more like him, the less and less I care about a lot of things that sometimes we spend a lot of time caring about. And so here's what I know. I know that life change happens only when we can encounter Jesus and we let him into our life and he begins to radically transform and change every part of us. Is it comfortable? No. Is it painful at times? Absolutely. For some of us, he whispers quietly and very still and is consistent, and we hear him and we respond to him. For others of us, it takes a 2x4 against the head. How many of you are 2x4 people? Like Jesus just has to shout and kind of knock you down a little bit. Yes. Some of you, that does not surprise me who raised your hands. That's good. That's good. So here's what we've done. The longer you're around, the longer you'll understand that I can't change you. Our church can't change you. The people around you can't change you. Certainly God can use all of those things to help change you, but ultimately at the end of the day, only Jesus can change people. That's why Affecting Life Change is so important, because we're just going to be his ambassadors. We're going to be his salt and his light. We're going to be his hands and feet. We're going to be everything that he's called us to be so that we can help affect that change, knowing ultimately it's not my job to change you, but it's my job to help you know Jesus better, because I absolutely believe Jesus can change you. Do you hear me? Can you hear that? And so we have added, as you spend time, a process or some steps of how we want to affect life change. And so we say this around Mountain View. Mountain View exists to affect life change. How? Through belong, grow, and serve. 3 words. Belong, grow, and serve. And I want you to notice how belong, grow, and serve really has this vertical aspect. It's the relationship between me and God, but then there's this horizontal aspect too, that's the relationship between me and others, and you and others. And so when I explain belong, grow, serve really needs to be understood that it's really a 2-part scenario. It's a scenario between me and God, and a scenario between me and others. And so let's talk about that for a moment. The first one is belong. And this is what I believe. I believe that life change is most significantly observed when a person belongs to who? To Jesus. Notice I don't say Mountain View. We'll get there. But fundamentally, foundationally, the very most important relationship any of us can have is a relationship with Jesus. Not Jesus and something, not Jesus with something, Jesus. He is absolutely enough. And I want everybody who experiences anything about Mountain View to know that what business we are in is rolling out the red carpet so that you can enter into the throne room of God and you can meet Jesus. Because Jesus will absolutely change our lives. He will. And so that's the big piece of it. A personal relationship with Jesus and others is central to the Christian life. This is fundamental. It's foundational. It's why we do what we do. It sets us apart from every other nonprofit organization in the world. This is who we are. I love what Galatians says in chapter 3, verse 26. And really, I like it from the New Living Translation. You'll see why here in a moment. But this is what it says. It says, "For you are all children of God through faith in Christ Jesus. And all who have been united with Christ in baptism have put on Christ like putting on new clothes." And this is what it says. Look at this. "And now that you," what's the word? "belong to Christ, you are his heirs. And God's promise to Abraham," what? "belongs to you." Belongs to you. And I love this thinking because when we are in Christ, so many things are different about us. They just are. And so the second part, the horizontal part of this is this. Belong. Life change is most significantly observed when a person belongs to a community of people. And so then this is the invitation, isn't it? It's the invitation to you to be a part of what we're doing here. It's an invitation to be a part of a community of people. Is it messy? Yes, we'll talk about that in a moment. Is it hard at times? Absolutely. We're not always easy people to get along with. Well, some of us aren't, right? But I love what Acts chapter 2 says. Acts chapter 2 is that beautiful picture of the early church and what the early church people did. And this is what it says in Acts chapter 2. It says this: "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to the prayers." Have you seen what we've been doing today? It's this. It's this. But this is what I love. "And all who believed were together." They had all things in common. Jump down. "And day by day attending the temple together. Belonging together. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved." A personal relationship with Jesus is absolutely central to the Christian life. It's fundamental, it's foundational. Participating in this faith together is fundamental, it's foundational in the Christian life. So that's belong. You see why I'm passionate about belonging? That's why. And if you hear me, I'll talk about this all the time. We bounced a lot of words around as we thought about process, and belonging ultimately was the one we landed on because there is something special about belonging to Jesus and belonging with a group of other people to accomplish the work God has set before us. And so our second word, belong. Who knows it? Grow. Yes, grow. And if you've been around Mountain View long, then you certainly know how important grow is. And so we talk about grow groups all the time, okay? Grow groups all the time, we talk about it. And so how do we know that life change is happening? Well, this is what I know. Life change is most significantly observed when a person actively grows in that relationship with Jesus. And so we have some phrases that we use around here. One of the phrases we use is this: am I more like Jesus this year than I was last year? And if not, why not? Because clearly growth didn't happen. Peter writes this in 1 Peter. He says, "So put away all malice and put away all deceit and all hypocrisy and envy and all slander." We're all still working on that, aren't we? "Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk," here it is, "that by it you may grow." That you may grow up into salvation. I think one of the most dangerous things that we've figured out in the church or church history is we just believe salvation is an instantaneous moment. And although there is this moment that I become saved, salvation is a continuous thing that I should be a part of, right? That it's ongoing. It's not just this defining moment, although there is a defining moment. The defining moment is really a starting of something else where I'm becoming more and more and more like Jesus. That's why Paul wrote in Philippians chapter 2, it says this: "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only in my presence, but also much more in my presence," he says this, Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It's this ongoing. It doesn't mean it's done. It's like a project. We have a flood. We're going to take some walls out. We got to take insulation out. We got to check wires. We've got to put all that stuff back in. And then at some point, we're finally going to be able to paint the thing. It is a process. Certainly, I wish I could that didn't work. Don't you? Don't you have projects at home sometimes you just wish you could snap your finger and it would just happen? And it doesn't always work that way, does it? No, it's working it out with fear and with trembling. And so growing is about becoming more and more like who? Jesus. Jesus. And that's what we want. And so then we've got the horizontal piece, right? The us piece. And so life change is most significantly observed when a person actively grows in community with who? With one another. With each other. And it's Galatians, again, chapter 6. It says this, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should do what? Restore him. In the spirit of what? Gentleness. Again, some of us need the 2x4, right? It should be bolded, yeah. So keep watch on yourself, lest you be tempted. And then here it is. Bear one another's burdens. And so fulfill the law of Christ. Spiritual and relational growth in the context of community is essential in becoming fully devoted followers of Jesus. And it's hard right now because there are a lot of people in the world who look at the organized church and just say, not for me. And some of that's because, honestly, the organized church has failed on a lot of different levels and many different times. We missed the mark. We missed the word gentle. We missed the word love. We missed some words. But I am devoted and I am committed to the local church because at this point, this is the very thing that I think God has created so that we can participate together and share one another's burdens and share in restoring each other when we struggle and fall. This is it. This is why the church is so beautiful. And so the big question is this: if you are not more like Jesus this year than you were last year, what's wrong? What happened? I have failed you, and our church has failed you, and you have failed yourself in becoming more and more like Jesus and working out your salvation and becoming more like Him, growing up in our relationship with Jesus. And our commitment is to launch new groups as often and as frequently as we can. And so you can already guess where I'm going by the end of the message, okay? That was your big hint. Right? As often as we can. We want it to be normal if you attend Mountain View that you also have a group of people. Seriously, Sunday mornings are great. We love Sunday mornings, but very little life change actually happens on a Sunday morning. Are you aware of that? I mean, there is some, but I'll tell you what, you talk to somebody who's been engaged in a group where they have real conversations and they're vulnerable, right? We love this verse that we use around the church, right? As iron sharpens iron, so one man. Have you heard this verse? Right? We make it sound so pretty, like an afternoon tea with doilies, right? Like, oh, we're just going to get together and we're going to sharpen one another. Have you ever seen a blacksmith sharpen iron on iron? Has anybody ever seen this? Is it pretty? No! There is nothing pretty about iron being on iron. It's messy. It's hot. It creates sparks and fire and a lot of mess, dusty mess. And we say, oh, we just want to sharpen one another as iron sharpens iron, right? No, this is intense. There's some intensity to it, and we want that to be normal in our relationship with each other, in our relationship with Jesus, so that we can become more and more like Him. that make sense? And so we have one more word, and the last word is serve. Belong, grow, serve. Because I also believe that life change is most significantly observed when a person clothes themselves with humility to serve others on behalf of Jesus. I just believe this. And Colossians 3 says this, whatever you do, work heartily as if you're working for the Lord, not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. Why? Because you are serving the Lord. So simple. We understand it. But then when we face opportunities to do it, sometimes it's a struggle. Jesus himself said this in Mark chapter 10. He says, but it shall not be so among you in this conversation of who's going to be the greatest. But whoever would be great among you must be your, what is it? Servant. And whoever be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. We talked about this a little bit last week. If it's good enough for Jesus in this moment, it probably is an example and good enough for me. That my objective in life is not to be served, but my objective in life, as I become more and more like Jesus, is to serve others. Micah 6:8, he has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I mean, these are outstanding verses to remind us that we have not been placed on this earth as Jesus' followers, as his disciples, for the world to cater to me, to serve me, to give me everything that I want. No, it is my objective to serve people. And I actually believe that this is the greatest way and the greatest tool of evangelism is often to shut our mouths and just to do something with our hands. And to seek that moment and to seek that opportunity when a person says, why are you doing this? And then I get to tell my story. And I tell people why I do what I do. For the first time in a long time, Sarah and I have both had opportunities with people who just are curious. They just want to know. And we're just committed to not saying a lot, but just serving people. And the conversations that have come out of just being kind, by just being loving, by just showing up, by being consistent, have been incredible. And I would argue that all we have to do to engage in great spiritual conversation is show up, be consistent, serve, and shut up. We do. We talk way too much. And this is why the world's confused about Christianity, because we've said Christianity and this and this and this are all in one big bucket together. And the reality is our faith, Jesus is enough. And so, life change is most significantly observed when a person uses their abilities, their talents, their strengths to serve the church, to serve the circle of influence, to serve people beyond their own comfort zone with the intended purpose of making disciples. Right? This is what Romans says. Romans chapter 12, a great chapter, says this, for as in one body we have many members. Look, there's many of us. And the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ and individually members one of another. Having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them, if prophecy in proportion to our faith, if service in our serving, the one who teaches in his teaching, the one who exhorts in his exhortation, the one who contributes in generosity, the one who leads with zeal, the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. I believe, and I want you to believe, because it says it, that God gave us abilities and talents for the purpose of service to impact the world filled with people who don't belong to Jesus. He's given us these things. And so we are to care and to minister to the needy among us. We read that in Acts chapter 4. In Acts chapter 4, we read how there was no needy people around the early Christians because they took care of one another. I love that when we take care of one another, it will spill into the world. The early Christians went out into the streets. They proclaimed Jesus not just with words, but with their actions. And I loved a couple weeks ago watching how people who were close to the Julfs just surrounded them and loved them. If you don't know, Merlin Julfs went to be with Jesus last week. And it was fast. It was fast. And what I loved is I loved watching our church family just love on them. Text messages, Facebook messages, cards, flowers. It was beautiful, to the point of even the people on the outside who are watching who don't follow Jesus yet are saying, wow, look how great. Look how wonderful. There are so many people taking care of the Julfs. It draws the attention of the world. They see it. They observe it. They watch it. And when we take care of each other, it spills out. It spills out. It's noticeable. Why? Because we really live in a world where we like to kick people when they're down, not lift them up. And so when we lift people up, it seems so strange, so out of the ordinary. Let's do more of that. I believe that the way we treat one another is actually the greatest test of our faith. Just is. And so, let me, do you understand belong, grow, serve better now? Yes? You still with me? Did I put you to sleep? That's great. All in. Super, super. When's lunch, right? All in. When's lunch? Right there. I get it. Let me be clear about a couple of things. We are not perfect people. I mean, just look at you. Okay? We're not. We are not perfect people. I tell people I'm just one lump of clay talking to a bunch of other lumps of clay. God is the potter. He gets to mold us and shape us, right? But we are not perfect people. And there are two types of people who go to church. Two types of people. Those who like to pretend they are perfect. And then those of us who know that despite all of our best efforts and exhausting efforts, we will never be perfect. And so how many of you fit into that camp? Yes, I hope so. If you don't raise your hand, we need to talk afterwards, all right, about that whole humility and Jesus thing. Just saying. I love what Mark chapter 2 says. Jesus had heard it, and he said to them, those who are well have no need of a physician. But he says, but those who are sick. And Jesus says, I came not to call the righteous, I came to call the sinners. And I love that idea because that's just the truth. I mentioned Brennan Manning last week and the message in his book, The Ragamuffin Gospel. It was the first time I heard the quote, although I don't think it's attributed to him, but he says the church is not a museum for the saints or of the saints. Instead, the church is a hospital for sinners, the sick. And that's who we are. And I tell people one of the reasons I love church work is because the church is the only place in our culture where both the perpetrator and the victim come to the same place at the exact same time looking for the exact same thing. It makes it messy. Church work is messy. Because we're all seeking something greater than ourselves, something filled with grace and mercy and compassion. And so when we walk through these doors, whether we have been the perpetrator in something or the victim in something, we are all seeking the exact same thing from the only one we know who can actually give it to us. And so church work, church life, the cycle of the church, it just gets messy sometimes. And that's why we have guidelines, that's why we have covenants, that's why we have agreements, that's why we have standards, because we're trying to create the best community that we can actually create. But don't make a mistake, because we really are. We are a Bible-believing, gospel-centered church, and we strive every day to become more and more like Jesus. We are disciples. We are disciples who are walking with Jesus. Do you hear this? Belong. And we're becoming more like Jesus, and that's growing. And we're doing what Jesus did and Jesus served. And so when we belong to the church and Jesus, we're with him. It's belonging. And when we grow in our relationship with Jesus and with each other, we become more like Jesus. And then when we serve within the church and we serve in our community and then we serve across the globe, we're doing the stuff that Jesus did. We just are. And so we have an opportunity. Here's the big ask. You ready? No. All right, you're ready, but you've already decided in your mind. No. I'm going to try and change your mind right here, right? In a couple of weeks, we're going to do a 6-week series, and the series is called Born for This. All right, and Born for This is, how many of you were around for Monsters in the Closet last year? And do you remember that whole thing we did? We're doing it again, but this time the sermon series and the workbook and everything is going to be called Born for This. And it's a very practical next step for us to love the city, to love the community, to love the people and our neighbors and around us. And so on January 29th, we're going to launch this sermon and small group series called Born for This. And so it'll be 6 weeks. All right? And the alignment series, that's what it's called, is designed to start conversations and to provide biblical responses to some of those conversations that people are having. Our world is stimulated right now and has been for a couple of years. Have you felt that? Have you experienced that? I mean, the angst, the conversations, there's just a lot. We're not COVID angry anymore. We're just angry. And you can feel it. And I just think that we live in this really fast-paced, kind of crazy life. I feel it. I feel like, we've not stopped as a family for weeks. And it's just going and fast-paced. And then sometimes when you sit down, you wonder, what in the world are you doing? Have you ever had that experience? How many of you work out at a gym? Hold on just a second. Let me cross this out. All right, how many of you ever seen a gym? There we go. Good, right? You've seen a gym, right? How many of you have seen a thing called a treadmill? It's like this walking. Okay. Now we're there. Sometimes I feel like life is a lot like a treadmill, isn't it? Where we get on and you're going fast, but you're going nowhere, right? And sometimes we like it. We like to go into that mundane place where it's just consistent and we can do our thing and we can. But I don't believe our life, we were created for the treadmill. I think we were created for the walk in the park, where you're there and it's an adventure and it's something new and it's fresh air and there's things to see. It could be dangerous. It could be out of the ordinary. You might run into somebody who wants to talk to you. And I just think that that's life. And for many people, I think there's just this nagging question at the back of our minds that at the end of our 50-hour work week, where we deal with our kids and our grandkids and all of their activities, and we cook meals, we do laundry, we take care of all the things, we pay the bills, I think a lot of people are asking in this world, is there more to this? Is there more to this? More than just making money to pay the rent or to pay the mortgage, the car payments, or the basketball fees, or the utility bills, or buying groceries? Is this all that life is about? Is this all that life matters? Am I just on a treadmill trying to make things work as long as I can possibly make them work? And maybe these questions even float through our minds some. I know they do for me. And we know they are going through minds of our friends and our families and our neighbors and our coworkers and our peers at school. People are asking these questions all the time. And so in Born for this, we're just going to take 6 weeks, and we're going to try to do our best to discover what the Bible says about the purpose of our life, about living in community, about making a difference in the world, about the joy of helping others, and about loving abundantly, and just forgiveness and letting go of our past. And so we know that our community, we know this. The people in our lives, they are very interested in spiritual conversations. But they don't want to have those spiritual conversations by attending church. But people in your life will have spiritual conversations with you if you invite them in a small group setting. If you don't believe me, talk to somebody like Nell Anderson, who opens up her table. And how many spiritual conversations do you have around your table now? Many. I know I put you on the spot. I'm sorry. You love me anyway. Yes. Right? But it's just creating a space. And we know this to be true. A lot of Christians are afraid to have these conversations because we say, well, I may not have all the answers. I may not know all the things that they... You don't have to know everything. That's why it's called a conversation. We talk about it. We figure things out. We discern. We discuss the questions, and we discuss these type of things. And so we have an opportunity. And this is the ask, right? We have an opportunity for our unchurched friends, our unchurched family, our unchurched neighbors to taste and to see what the early church experienced as a community together, to love the people in our city. And so in order for everyone to have a group to join, this is the step of faith that I'm asking you to consider and you to take. I'm asking you to consider hosting a group where you would invite 2 or 4 or 6 or 12, right? People in your life, you would invite them to come around a table, come into your living room, meet at a coffee shop. I mean, it doesn't matter where so much, and begin having spiritual conversations. Haven't any of you ever asked the question, what am I living for? Like, what's the point of all of this? Anybody ever asked that question? You're not going to raise your hand now because you know what I'm getting ready to ask you to do, right? And I imagine that some of you have people in your life who are asking those questions, maybe a kid or a grandkid, who are asking these questions. And I just know this to be true. I know that Jesus said, and I think this is absolutely true today, he said, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And so we have been asking the Lord of the harvest, that's the next part of the verse, to send out workers into the harvest field. And so what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to pray also with us for workers, people in our church who will say, yes, I will host a group. And then secondly, we're asking that you would become the answer to that prayer. We believe God has been working in advance in the people in the lives around us. We've been praying so. We've been asking God, soften the hearts of people around us. Prepare them. Prepare them for this opportunity to ask. And I just believe that potentially hundreds of people will engage in these conversations, and they might see God in an entirely new light, and their own lives would actually be transformed because they would be able to meet the life changer, Jesus. Does that make sense? And then all of us can be what God designed us to do. So if you don't believe me, listen to Kyle Hamilton really quick. He's going to be up on the video here. He hosted a group last year, and this is what he had to say about it.
To come and do the alignment series at the end of the month. I encourage everybody to do this so that it brings you closer together, so you have a personal relationship with the people around you and Jesus Christ. I've done it a couple times. It's a great study to do. It is simple. Tom lines it up and just puts it out there very easy. So I encourage everyone to do this, whether it's your first time or your second time. One question I would ask you to ask yourself is why. Don't ask yourself why not. Ask yourself why you can do this.
So Kyle even asked, why can't you do it? Right? Why can't you do it? So here's what I'm going to do. This is going to be the ask for the next couple of weeks. There's a card in the back of the chair in front of you. And it's a little card, right? There's three or four things in there. So you might have to dig down just a little bit. But there's a card in there. And we know that one of the scariest things about hosting a group is actually hosting the group. And so Pastor Craig is absolutely committed to helping you become a great host, a host who can feel confident about hosting. And so we want to take the next couple of weeks and we want to prepare you for that. And so there's a card in the back of the chair in front of you. It should say something like "Born for This." Did everybody find it? You finding it? You looking for it? Great. 4 people are looking for it. This is going to be great, right? There's a card there. And if the card doesn't work, then guess what? We're going to make it real easy. How many of you have a phone? Because you're like, I just don't want to write anything anymore. Here it is. Grab your phone. You can text HOST, H-O-S-T, to 971-415-5002. All right? How many of you got your phone out? Phone or the card? How many of you are just absolutely at this moment, you're like, no way, not happening? How many of you are not answering me anymore? Wow. Okay, thank you, Mike. I was feeling it. And so this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment. I just want you to think, just for a moment. God, have you strategically placed people in my life right now? In my circles of influence, the places I go, the things I do, are there people in my life right now who don't know Jesus? And when I think about their life, they are running ragged. They're running fast. They're on the treadmill of life. They're just going. Maybe with little to no purpose. And the big question is then, God, can you use me? Can you use me to facilitate some spiritual conversations with these people and let them just capture a glimpse of who Jesus is and how great he is? And if the answer is yes, then fill out that card. And in just a little bit, we're going to invite you to go straight to the fireside room and meet with Pastor Craig so he can give you everything you need to begin feeling some confidence about doing this. If you text because you're online, Pastor Craig will get in touch with you tomorrow. He'll be in touch. He'll say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and he will help build the confidence with you too. Just text HOST to the phone number that you see on the screen. But as a whole church, whether we take this step and host or not, let's really be serious about God using our church to help change the lives of the 77,000 people in Gresham who say they have zero religious or faith affiliation whatsoever. 77,000. And with the Alignment Series, we hope just to have an impact with a couple of hundred of them. We all know. We all know it. We look at the world around us and we can't stand what's going on. But we have to decide, are we going to be a part of that solution or not? Are we going to just keep with our arms crossed, grumbling and complaining, or are we going to actually help them experience the life changer, Jesus? And if not this way, I'm open to a lot of ideas about how we can do it. So we're going to sing a song here in a moment, and it's also going to serve as the song for our prayer time. And honestly, prayer time is for anybody and anything that we might be struggling with. It can be for the praises that we have. It can be for the sorrows we have. It can be about the struggles that we're experiencing in life and marriage and finances and work. It can be about a lot of different things. And so I'm going to ask us to stand. I'm going to invite us to pray. Maybe your prayer is this today. God, I'm ready to be used by you. And so let's stand together. If you'd like to come forward for prayer while we sing, please do so.
If If it's bandaging the broken or washing filthy feet, here I am, Lord, send me. If it's loving one another, even when we don't agree, here I am, Lord, send me.
If I'm poor or if I'm wealthy, I'll serve you just the same. Here I am, Lord, send me on a mountain or a valley. I will choose to praise. Here I am, Lord, send me. If I'm known by how I love, let my life reflect how much I love you. I love you. And before you even ask, oh, my answer will be yes, 'cause I love you. I love you.
God, at the end of the day, this is our prayer. You have gifted us, you have supplied us with much. To go and to just be your hands, your feet, to be the salt and light, to be your love to a world that's running ragged, that's moving fast, that feels like things are out of control, whether it's relationships or finances or their work or the economy, whatever it might be. God, we know that you offer an abundant life, a life that is full and a life that is complete and a life that is whole. And for some of us, even in this room, although our smiling faces are on, we're discouraged, we're frustrated. We're frustrated with the lack of faith in our families, the lack of faith in our friends, the lack of faith that exists in the world. We're frustrated with how things are going, and we're frustrated about a lot of things in life, and yet, God, you are continually nudging us about being all about you, about being all in, about being your hands and your feet and your salt and your light. So God, I don't know what's holding us back today from serving, from loving, from showing compassion at the levels that we need to, so it would pour out of our own lives into the lives of the people around us, and they would start asking why we do what we do and why we believe what we believe and why we do church the way we do church. And people would start asking, and it would begin opening opportunities to help people experience Jesus in their lives, because when we experience you, everything changes. So God, I just pray that you would help us knock down barriers, that we would be all in, not just to our church, but to what you're doing in the world. That we would be all in, committed to using our gifts and our talents and our abilities and our resources to glorify you. That God, you would send us into places that are outside of our comfort. That you would engage us in conversations that we don't have all the answers for. And that ultimately we might just shine bright for you. God, that's our prayer today. And so help us with whatever is in our way, with whatever excuse we might have, with whatever is holding us back. God, would you deal with those things in our lives today? In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
If the truth cuts like an arrow, I will say it
When I stand before your glory, I'll be glad I chose to say, here I am, Lord, send me. Well done, good and faithful, I live to hear you say, here I am, Lord, send me. Oh, here I am, Lord, send me, send me. Here I am, Lord, send me. If I know my how I love, let my life reflect how much I love you. I love you. And before you even ask, oh, my answer will be yes, 'cause I love you. I love
And thanks for being with us today. I hope your heart is full and you feel a little bit more informed and you're ready to go and do the very things that we've been equipped to do. And so if you filled out one of those cards or you sent a text, I invite you right now to go meet Pastor Craig over in the fireside room, and he'll give you what you need. If you need the text, let's put the text number up. If you're online with us and didn't grab that, then you can send a text, and Pastor Craig will be in contact with you tomorrow, and he'll be able to get you equipped for what you're going to need. And just know, this was the first ask. We'll ask again next week and the week after that, all right? And so please still come, all right? Just know we're going to keep asking. And so thanks for being with us today. You're dismissed.
you.